Welcome to Gamecock Pod Live.
For the next 3 to 4 years, I'll be committed to the University of... Okay,
This is Rodgers again to the 25, 20, 15, 10. Rodgers scores! Jamie Bradford Jr. delivered for the Gamecocks. Lost it up, looking for Kelly. Touchdown! Can you believe it?
And South Carolina is sending shockwaves through the SEC.
Frederick! Plays it in at the buzzer! That's a win! Unbelievable! I don't believe it!
And now, live from Studio 54 of the Gamecock Pod Studios, here's the Cockfather himself, Keith Alsep.
All right, everybody, welcome into Gamecock Pod Live for July the 19th, 2023, episode number 1254 of Gamecock Pod and Gamecock Daily, Gamecock Pod Daily. We have a great show coming up today. In just a few minutes, we will be joined by my good friend and the co-host of Inside the Gamecocks, Jamie Bradford. JB is an expert on Gamecock baseball. We will chop it up for a few minutes about that, but then we will slide into a conversation on Gamecock football, on SEC media days, on the team, on newcomers and recruiting, and a whole lot more. Then, in the second part of the show, we will be joined by Emily Adams from the Greenville News and USA Today, and we'll also talk a lot about SEC Media Day. She is on her way, or will be on her way shortly to Nashville, to arrive in time for Shane Beamer's appearance tomorrow on the dais, and also Spencer Rattler, Kai Kroger, and Tonka Hemingway. They will all be there as well. And I don't know if Beamer and Josh Heupel will finally get to exchange handshakes, since they didn't exchange handshakes after that 63-38 ass whipping they took at the hands of the Gamecocks last November. But I have a feeling that will be kind of a very chilly exchange if they follow each other. Not a whole lot of love lost there. All right, let's jump into our Nana's Porch news, notes, and headlines, brought to you by Nana's Porch, a full-service catering company servicing the greater Charlotte area. Whether it is a banquet, a corporate event, a wedding, whatever the occasion, maybe it's just a big backyard bash with the whole hog barbecue, Nana's Porch has got you covered. You want to bring in a food trailer for any kind of event, whether it's the end of your Little League season, maybe it's a women's or men's group at church, maybe it's a Boy Scouts or Cub Scouts or Girl Scouts. Nana's Porch voted one of the top 3 food trailers in the local newspaper poll there in Charlotte. And as we all know, their pimento cheese, good, no doubt about it, voted number 1 in the meat and cheese category by the North Carolina Specialty Foods Association. Check them out at nanasporch.com. That's NANASPORCH.com. Get in touch with my good friend Chris Payne. Support this Gamecock-owned and operated business. All right, so the news of the day starts with 8 new members that will be enshrined into the Gamecock Letterman Hall of Fame. Maybe I should say inducted instead of enshrined. Allison Brennan, 2001 to 2006, the first and only NCAA champion by a Gamecock individual in swimming and diving. She will be inducted. Ernest Dye, one of the best offensive linemen to ever play at the University of South Carolina. I was just having a conversation about him yesterday with my good friend Jerry Inman. They were teammates. Ernest came in from junior college, and he was an All-American left tackle, and he played several years in the NFL prior to being in just a horrible auto accident. I won't get into the details, but that ended his NFL career. But he was a stud. Eric Decker was a standout on the Gamecock golf team in the late 1990s. He climbed as high as number 3 in the national rankings. Sean Gortman, women's basketball, 1998 to 2002, a 4-year letter winner, 1,367 career points on 41% shooting over her career, 576 rebounds, 318 assists, 212 steals in 105 games. She led the Gamecocks in three-point shooting, both in the 2000-2001 and the 01-02 seasons, and she was a second-team All-SEC performer as a junior and then first-team as a senior. Wally Jones, a letter winner in baseball. He was All-ACC in 1967 to 1969 at second base. And Chris Mayotte, 1976 to 79, an accomplished member of the men's tennis team. He had a tremendous record and advanced to the NCAA quarterfinals in doubles. And 2 more to go. Kim Pietro, 1996 to 99, a 4-year letter winner for the Gamecock softball team. And Demetria Washington, 1999 to 2003. She was a sprinter who specialized in the 400 meters. She was a 6-time NCAA champion and part of South Carolina women's outdoor track and field team that won the 2002 NCAA championship, which was the first national championship for any Gamecock sports team. Congratulations to all of these great Gamecocks for their induction into the South Carolina Letterman's Hall of Fame. All right, elsewhere, the Gamecocks add a commitment from the baseball portal from Marist right-handed pitcher Drake Quinn. Really good stuff. Throws in the 90s. He did have some control issues. That's what Matt Williams is for, but he throws 5 pitches: fastball, sinker, cutter, changeup, and he's got the big sweeping breaking ball as well. And so Gamecocks add him to the pitching staff and are in hot pursuit of 2023 pitcher Jake McCoy, who signed with Wofford. Their coach left. He has since sought a release and has been granted a release of his national letter of intent. He pitched at Catawba Ridge High School. He throws 95 miles per hour. This past season, he was the number 4 prospect in the country by Diamond Prospects. He was 8-2 with a 1.65 ERA, 105 strikeouts in 55 1/3 innings. This is a big-time arm and would be an impact guy capable of being in your rotation on the weekends. So we'll see how it goes there. All right, so it was not the best day yesterday for Gamecock football recruiting. The news was not good on several prospects that South Carolina thought was going to be attending their cookout next Friday, which is the 28th of July. As of today, Jalewis Solomon will not be there. Jonathan Paylor will not be there. Daniel Hill will not be there. But as we all know, 17-year-olds change their mind every time the wind blows. And I have no doubt that the Gamecock coaching staff is going to do everything they can to get these guys back on campus. Jonathan Paylor has set his decision date. It is August the 5th. That is the same day as Jalewis Solomon. Maybe it's a coincidence. Maybe it's good news for the Gamecocks. Who knows? I just know I take Lou Holtz at his word when he says things are never as good as they seem. Things are never as bad as they seem. It's somewhere in the middle. Okay, the sky is not falling. The world is not ending. Don't jump off a building like they did in 1929 on Black Thursday when the stock market crashed. Okay, recruiting is a marathon. It's not a sprint. And guess what? Guys change their minds, okay, as we all know. So the news is still good on Dylan Stewart for him to attend the cookout. And so that's a positive. Daniel Hill has set his announcement for August the 23rd, right before his season begins. I was told earlier in the week by somebody in the building it was going to be a really good August for South Carolina football. Hopefully that will still be the case. But time is the ultimate test, and we will find out sooner rather than later. Clemson has offered Gamecock offensive line target Elijah Thurman, 6'4", 275, of Hinesville, Georgia, at the Bradwell Institute. Used to be a Gamecock stronghold. Kevin Harris came out of there. We'll see where he goes on the 28th for the cookout. Hopefully he will still show up at South Carolina. Clemson has kind of lost out on several of their offensive line prospects, so now they've offered Elijah Thurman. So as far as Jalewis Solomon is concerned, here's the good news. He's not visiting Florida State. This has been a 2-horse race with South Carolina and Florida State jockeying for pole position throughout. However, he does have an older brother at Auburn, and as of today, he is going to Auburn. So at least he's not going to Florida State. Hopefully, Torian Gray, Clayton White, Shane Beamer, and company can convince him to get to Columbia prior to the dead period getting going. All right, and congrats to one of my all-time favorite Atlanta Braves, the crime dog, Fred McGriff. A great trade deadline acquisition a little over 30 years ago by the Atlanta Braves. And they turned it around. I think they were 8, 10, 12 games out of first. They wound up winning the division that year. And I made a bet, which will not be revealed, which is probably the greatest bet I've ever won in my life. And I'll just leave it at that. But the crime dog, Fred McGriff, going to the Hall of Fame. Congratulations to him and his family. He deserves it. No doubt about it. All right. We will be back momentarily with Jamie Bradford. But first, let's pay some bills. Here we go.
If you enjoy listening and watching the free Wednesday show, now live streaming on YouTube, and would love more Gamecock Pod daily, join our growing Gamecock family by becoming a monthly or annual subscriber. You'll be able to listen to the show every day of the week and listen to guests like J.C. Sherbert, Hale McGranahan, and John Whittle from thebigspur.com, Colin Taylor and Mike Uva from Gamecock Central, Emily Adams from the Greenville News, Ben Portnoy, Michael Lanana, and Jeremiah Holloway from GoGamecocks.com, Michael W. Bratton, the host of That SEC podcast, and many, many more. As a VIP subscriber, you can join or listen to the weekly live Zoom call with up to 100 of your favorite Gamecocks and friends. After the show is an unrecorded overtime segment where the real scoop gets dropped and discussed. It's like going down to your local pub or sports bar and having a conversation with your Gamecock friends about last week's football game, men's and women's basketball games, and Gamecock baseball. And of course, there's always recruiting to discuss. In addition to the weekly Zoom call, VIP subscribers get the most popular podcast, The Morning After, which is released every Sunday morning during football season, and more VIP perks are in the works. Follow Keith on Twitter at KAllset, or follow the show on Twitter at GamecockPod. Go to the top of the homepage and follow the link. If all else fails, go to patreon.com/GamecockPod Daily. Join now and get up to 3 months free off an annual VIP subscription. You will love it, guaranteed. Now, back to Gamecock Pod Live.
All right, we are back, and we welcome in our good friend, fresh off of a tremendous episode of Inside the Gamecocks, my good friend, Jamie Bradford. JB, thanks for jumping on today. Outstanding interview with the young lady from Park Ave, which is a branch of ESM, which is now under the umbrella of Carolina Rise, a logo that is prominently displayed on this layout. Thanks to Phil Mullinex for that. So how's it going, man? How you doing? How was Delaware? How was the vacation?
Good. Yeah, it was good. We needed it. That's for sure. Of course, we were looking at our bank account last night, and now we're kind of regretting some of it, but it was good.
Brother,
weather,
aren't we all?
You know, believe it or not, the weather wasn't much better up there. It was for that time for Delaware, it was hot. It was in the low to mid 90s, and that's rare. But so that was good. Actually, ran into a couple of random people up there who watch our program, which was unbelievable. One of them was on the boardwalk in Rehoboth. And so that was really neat. So if they watch your show too, hats off to both of those gentlemen. Really appreciate that. And just been playing some golf and trying to ease through July. And we all know after Coach Beamer speaks tomorrow on SEC Media Days that we basically have about another week before we really start to dial it in with fall practice.
Yeah, well, JB, it's talking season.
Yeah, it is. There's no doubt.
And so Shane Beamer will definitely talk tomorrow. So I got to say, low to mid 90s, that might as well be wintertime right now for me. So here was my week last week. We have the Cal Ripken tournament out here in Round Rock every day, Monday through Friday. I work Monday, Tuesday. In the morning, Thursday, I worked all day. It was 108. Friday and Saturday, I worked a showcase tournament at Texas State University in San Marcos. They have a turf field. And you know what? They have a cockaboose. Well, I mean, it's not a cockaboose, but it's a caboose. And it's right on the first base line past the dugout. And they got these nice leather bench seats on it. And it's the only other place I've ever seen a caboose. And I thought that was neat. But what was not neat was doing games on field turf when it's 111 degrees and the temperature on the turf is in the 130s.
No,
brutal.
Yeah, it's you know what, I've actually, when I was coming up in I was, gosh, man, I don't know, maybe 16 or 17, we played a tournament down at the I can't remember if this one was the Royals or the Indian Spring Training Complex in Florida. It was one of them. And we had a day like that. We actually, our first game was at 8:30 in the morning, and we had a double header. But in some of those tournaments, you know, you don't play back to back necessarily. So we played at 8:30, and then we turned around and played somewhere at 3:30 in the afternoon. And I remember showing up to the ballpark thinking, "There's no way that we could play this game. It's too hot." And it was a turf field. It was the same thing, and because it just cooks you from the ground up, basically. And that was back, you know, so that was 20 years ago. Or plus. And that was before they've made some of the changes and some of the turf that they lay down now, specifically in big league facilities and college facilities. But back then it wasn't really like that. And so you just cooked the whole time. So we come in the dugout and put the wet towels on your neck and the whole 9 yards. And I was a catcher. And so I was even hotter, and it was awful. But yeah, so better you than me. I'm glad to see that you're still alive and not suffering from any type of stroke. Let's hope that doesn't happen.
Yeah, I mean, it was tough, especially the first day. The second day, more Pedialyte, more Propels, more food, more peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, bananas, etc., just to keep potassium and sodium in your body. So then last night I umpire our under 30 men's league championship game, which features a lot of former Division I college players, some guys that played in the minors. And it was 108. But it felt mild because of the days I had been on the turf, and it started at 7. So, you know, it kind of dissipated quickly from 108 to, you know, we were in the 90s, but at least there was some shade and a little bit of breeze. But at any rate,
yeah,
it's brutal. So, hey, so let's start with Gamecock baseball, because you played baseball for Ray Tanner. You're tied into that program. And so I wanted to get your thoughts, number one, on the additions of Matt Williams and Joey Holcomb to the staff.
Well, I don't think that Coach Kingston could have made better hires, honestly. And that comes with a caveat, because Joey coming over is at the expense of Scott Wingo and being promoted on the field, and I dearly love Scott Wingo, and I mean that. Known Scotty a long time. He's a wonderful friend with an unbelievable family, and he is a brilliant baseball mind. And so I don't know if he's. Nobody knows. I don't even know if Scott knows whether he's going to continue to hang around in the role that he's technically going to be in, which is an off-field role. I think it'd be better for him to leave the program and go coach on the field somewhere, if he wants to coach forever. So that hurts. There's no doubt. He's a valuable member of the community and of the baseball program for every reason under the sun. But bringing in Coach Holcomb from bringing in his recruiting experience and his on-field experience and all that stuff and everything that he's going to add, coming out of old Bowie's Creek, North Carolina, it's going to be a little bit different in Columbia, but he's fantastic. I mean, he's going to do wonderful stuff. Matt Williams, you couldn't replace Justin Parker with anybody better. I mean, his family's legendary in high school coaching. Matt knows the state inside and out. He's recruited the Southeast really well. He has connections all over the country, which is how they landed. The young man's name escapes me, but the kid from California, they just signed him pitcher. Anyways, that the story in itself is interesting. I think John Whittle actually reported on it. And he's a guy who knows how to develop, and he's willing to take chances on dudes who maybe aren't quite ready, but they have something in there, and he can find value in what they do have and over time create more value. And so he's a wonderful hire. They have an excellent staff, and I think that they still have to plug some holes on the pitching staff as from a numbers standpoint and from a talent standpoint. But ultimately, they've got the right guys in place to be able to develop that. They've signed an outstanding group of portal guys. I don't know how much you've talked about the young man that's coming in from UNC Greensboro, Kennedy Jones, but I've got pretty good sources in college baseball. I know a couple of dudes that were after him, and I know one that recruited him out of high school initially. And it's been said to me multiple times. I'm talking, Keith, literally probably, I know of three, but if not 4 or 5 different conversations I've had about this kid, that he's probably one of the top 4 or 5 hitters in the portal, if not higher than that. And he's a dude. And the kid coming from North Florida is a dude. And, they've done some nice, put in some nice plugs. So I like where they are, and they've got a nice staff. And I think Gamecock baseball, hopefully it's back to what Coach Tanner once said about it 20 plus years ago. We don't rebuild at South Carolina, we reload. And they've done too much rebuilding over the last 5 or 6 years. It's time to get back into reload. And back then it was JUCO guys, now it's portal guys. You plug the holes, you move on, and you keep winning 40 games. And I know that's what's on Coach Kingston's radar.
No doubt. So, I mean, obviously, I think you'd still love to add another couple of left-handed pitchers, but maybe the most important piece that's out there, well, Jake McCoy, who throws 95 miles an hour, who was the number 4 prospect by Diamond Prospects. He was going to Wofford. He's been granted a release. I mean, JB, is he a guy that could come in and compete for a spot in a weekend rotation? I mean, it sounds like he's that talented.
Well, you don't ever want to say no to stuff like that. I don't think it's fair to the kid. I mean, I think that they feel pretty comfortable about where they are right now as far as what that rotation will look like. And you've got to give a leg up to the guys who are transferring in, whom have already pitched in college baseball, and done it at a nice level. I mean, Ty Good coming in from Coach Holbrook's team at the College of Charleston. He's probably more of a weekday guy as it stands today, but when you get to play for the school that you've dreamed of playing for, like he does, he grew up a big Gamecock fan, crazy things happen. And now, so this young man here being a lefty, I think the most common question I've gotten about him, not that I'm an expert, but I've had a couple of people ask me questions. Why was he going to Wofford? Why wasn't he at Clemson? Why wasn't he at South Carolina, or whatever it is? And I said, look, some guys bloom late. Okay. I've got a contact who's recruited him a couple of years ago. Probably wasn't a dude that would necessarily be on the radar. Committed to Wofford, stuck with his commitment, was excited about going there. Wofford, by the way, has a pretty good program, or at least they did before Enter Donato left. And so, some of these young men make decisions, and baseball recruiting has gotten younger and younger, and that's what they end up doing. But, with what's happened in the upstate, it gives the Gamecocks a chance maybe to move in and sign this kid. Anytime you got a lefty, Keith, this, you're a baseball guy. If you're a lefty, lefties are interesting, right? Because if you're above 90, they're going to find somewhere to use you. But also, right, if you're way below 90 and under bat speed, they're probably still going to try to find somewhere to use you, because that's rare these days. And it sucks to face a guy who's out there just humping 85. It also sucks to face a lefty who's throwing 94, 95. So he's going to get a chance. And, I'm confident if they sign him, he's going to pitch next year. Now, whether he pitches himself into the rotation or not, who knows? But he'll be a guy who will pitch, and they'll be thrilled to get him if they do.
JB, I can't tell you. There's a kid who just graduated from Bowie High School here in Austin, and he is a junk pitcher. Most of the time, this kid doesn't throw hard enough to break a pane of glass. You'd be surprised the number of college players in the CCBL here who they just can't touch him, or they pop it up. And he's a lefty, and he just throws junk. And when he does speed it up, they're way late on it because they're just not expecting it.
Right. Yep.
Lefties, crafty lefties are hard to hit no matter what the velo, in my opinion. But a guy that can throw hard, like Max Fried when he's healthy, that has command of 3 or 4 pitches, those guys, that's why they get paid the big bucks.
That's right. Yeah, there's no question. Oh, they need a guy. They don't have a lefty like that right now. No offense to Matthew Becker in any way, shape, or form.
Right. Yeah. Dude, I love Matthew Becker. I think his upside is tremendous. But if you could add this guy and you could coach him up, that's when you're really cooking with grease right there, I think.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, it will be. They'll know soon enough. Pretty soon, as a matter of fact.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
Hopefully pretty soon. Yep.
This, that, and the other. Yep.
Yeah. This, that, and the other. All right. So speaking of this, that, and the other, Shane Beamer speaks tomorrow at SEC Media Days. It should be a very interesting day. Lane Kiffin, who is the one coach in college football that will be day-to-day the rest of his career, no matter where he is, because he's just that guy.
Good point.
But he is interesting. And so he leads off, then Shane Beamer, and then Josh Heupel. More chins than wins over Shane Beamer. Had to get that one in there. Maybe if they pass each other, we'll finally get that handshake, JB, that we didn't get after the 63-38 ass whipping. But if I was a betting man, I wouldn't bet on that. There's no love lost between those two guys.
No, and Shane is he's excited. He's excited to tell people about his team, and this moment tomorrow for Gamecock football. It really is what SEC Media Days is meant to be about. You're bringing a head coach to town who has no problem with standing up there and isn't just happy to be there, but he's willing to answer questions and be excited for the season being right around the corner. But also, there is some optimism that their team could be one that's on the rise this year if they're able to pull an upset or two, just like they did last year. Well, actually, they pulled multiple upsets last year when you go back and look at it, 4 of them of their 8 wins. If not more than that, I know 4. But then the kicker with all this, though, is you're bringing your quarterback. And there's only 5 quarterbacks this year at SEC Media Days, and Spencer Rattler is one of them. And he's probably the most intriguing one, maybe outside of Jaden Daniels down at LSU, simply because they're looking to win a national championship. But even with that, Spencer Rattler has been on college football's radar for over 4 seasons. And so, you're talking about a guy who he's going to be pummeled with questions tomorrow, and Shane Beamer is going to be pummeled with questions up on that podium about his quarterback. And a lot of them are going to be the same questions that he received last year about this guy. However, the way that the season ended for Spencer, those final 3 games, I'm including Notre Dame in that, and how he was able to roll out there and play good football, now people have seen why Spencer Rattler is at South Carolina and what he's capable of doing. So it's going to be an interesting day. I think it's going to overall be a really good day for Gamecock football. And I think that Shane is I know that Shane is excited to be there and tell the stories of their program and why they have a chance to maybe make some noise behind Georgia this year.
Well, Jamie, there's no doubt about it. And look, Shane Beamer, he is Alec Baldwin from Glengarry Glen Ross. Always be closing. ABC. For Shane, it's always be recruiting. And it will be, before he starts taking questions, an infomercial on recruiting. And there could be some specific positions called out by Shane Beamer, just like there was last year, because he gets it. And there is excitement and optimism. I mean, the last 2 years, I've labeled it as the summer of Shane, because from the culture building, the summer recruiting has been off the chains. This year, thus far, it really hadn't been the summer of Shane. It was the spring of Shane.
Yeah.
But he's got an opportunity to reset that tomorrow, okay, because there is still one recruiting weekend, and then there are several decisions in August, which is the hottest month of the summer. And so I think he's got a chance to reset and recalibrate the summer of Shane heading into some of these decisions that could include 5-star defensive end Dylan Stewart.
Yeah, no question. I mean, I think that when, you go back a couple of months, Keith, clearly, I know you've covered this probably essentially almost every day for the last couple of months, if not more than that. And the way that things got started, and you felt like, wow, if it just stays on this track, you're looking at maybe the best recruiting class in the history of the program, coming off of another year where you exceeded expectations. Things just can't be going any better. Let's go ahead and knock on wood before I say this, but outside of that incident at the very beginning of the year, you don't have a program where you got kids running into a bunch of problems in the summer. Remember those days? You go back and you used to this was long before all the access and technology, and it was as connected as it is now, and all the different shows and all the different things, and you just held your breath through the summer to hope that nobody did anything stupid. And then you get to August and you go, okay, all right, everybody's here. Nobody did anything dumb. You haven't really worried about that at South Carolina for a while, definitely since Coach Spurrier came along. So, but, getting this conversation back to recruiting, it started out so well, and you think you're going to continue to do the same thing they've done the last couple of years. And then, it's been a little bit dry out there. You see guys putting on different hats, predicted to go to different programs. They're top-notch guys. I think part of that is the fact that they have increased their pool of recruiting, jumped in a deeper pool, maybe is a better term, of recruiting so quickly. They're going after some of the top prospects. They're not just going after the top prospects in South Carolina. They're landing all of those, but they're going after the top prospects all over the place, and they're getting into these big dog fights with the best programs in college football, who they have deep NIL pockets. They have incredible tradition. They have elite recruiters. They have all of the things that you need to sign the best players in the country, and they're losing some of those battles. Now, they haven't lost them all. And I think some folks are fearful that maybe the last few big ones, at least of the summer, could go against South Carolina. I'm not one of those people that's convinced of that. I think that there's a ton that changes day to day with these kids, and it's going to go up to the final hour with a lot of it. But it's not also a slam dunk like it seemed to be for a while with a lot of the other dudes too. So to your point, this is one of those instances where, outside of a couple of fan bases out there, eliminate the fan bases, eliminate Clemson, eliminate Tennessee. You could probably go ahead and eliminate Kentucky and maybe a couple of others who just despise seeing Coach Beamer on television. As it pertains to the actual program, Keith, recruits, their families, your fan base, the media, the more you see of Shane Beamer, the better. The more he's in front of the camera, the better. He's a guy. I had a conversation yesterday at the golf course about Shane, who was about 100 yards away from me when I was having this conversation. And I said, Shane is in a unique spot because he's going to make a ton of money in coaching. And money has gotten to be so much in this industry, right? And you don't have to coach like you used to coach. Now, if you want to coach for 30 years, fine, because you love it, and that's great. But there's going to be a handful of guys at some point in time who are going to say, I'm 45. I've done this for 35 years. I've made $40 million, $50 million. I don't need this pressure anymore. And Shane Beamer is a guy who would fit right into SEC Nation. He would fit right into College Game Day. He's a very likable dude. And when you see him on TV, you know what I'm talking about. And so that's kind of what I'm getting at here is the more you see on television of Shane Beamer, the better off that's going to be for your program. I don't care what other fan bases think. I care about the program. And he is an unbelievable representative of that. So tomorrow will probably be another example.
I totally agree. So let's jump into the team. So, one of the questions, obviously, probably multiple questions that are going to come up, it's going to be about Dowell Loggains. And on this podcast, we don't mention the name of the previous guy. Mostly I just call him Captain Dumbass or the previous guy. And so, JC or JB, based on your inside information, based off the people that you talk to close to the program, inside the program, I mean, is it as positive as I'm hearing? Because I think Dowell Loggains is basically the anti-Captain Dumbass, if that term makes any sense.
Well, I'm gonna name drop on this one to help make this conversation a little bit easier for me to have. I think it's pretty well known out there. I've got a a wonderful relationship with my dear friend Pat DeMarco. And about any time we talk, I just listen. I'll ask Pat. I'm not talking about on the air now. I mean, certainly on the air, but off the air, I'll ask him a question because I'm trying to learn. When I cut the mic on and I cut a camera on, I don't want to say something that isn't correct. And so I want to make sure that I know what I'm talking about. And so I ask him lots of questions, and he's the only guy that I am close enough to be able to pick up the phone and call him at 6 a.m. because I know he's up like I am with children, or at 11 o'clock at night, and say, hey, I was thinking about something, and ask him that question when it comes to offense or football. And the reason why I lean on him is because he spent a long time in the NFL, and so did a guy named Dowell Loggains, and he understands NFL offense and he understands college offense. And Gamecock fans, and rightfully so, I'm no different from most anybody, have PTSD, and they should, because there has not been an incredible run of offensive coordinators here. Kurt Roper had a cup of tea in the NFL, and I don't know, maybe he had a little bit more rope to do what he wanted to do, it would have been different, but it wasn't very good. Of course, you would have loved to have had him back over last year. We saw what happened last season. Brian McClendon was not in a spot to really be able to call plays, and so the last great play caller you had was a guy named Steve Spurrier. And so now you bring this dude in who's got more than a decade's worth of experience in the league, but coaching guys who their full-time job is to be in the league. They get up in the morning, they're at the facility for 10 to 12 hours a day. They're learning the offense, they're understanding the offense, they're executing the offense, and that's what they get paid to do. That is not the same in college football. And so I often lean on Pat to make sure that I am understanding how this could work. And the returns that I have received based on, the information I get from him, but also others who just watch it, is that you have a guy who understands the differences. Now, that doesn't mean that you have a guy who's going to be the best play caller you've ever had. It doesn't mean that you have a guy who's going to crank up the heat on week 1 and Carolina's going to hang 60 on the Tar Heels. It doesn't mean that this is going to be one of the best offenses in the history of the school. It doesn't mean anything necessarily at this point in time. But it does mean that there's a guy who is understanding of the situation that he's in. And I think that that's really important, because I don't think that the guy last year necessarily understood that situation, at least until the end of the year, seemingly. And so when you have that, I feel like you have a chance if you have good players and if you have a good quarterback. Well, we know they have a good quarterback, and we know that largely they have good players. And so you feel like there's a chance, and the earlier that this all comes together, the better. If it comes together in week 1, that's wonderful. But I do feel like it's going to take, 2 or 3 games, Keith, for them to get it figured out. But based on what I've at least heard, I'm confident that this offense, there might be weeks where they're shut down because the other team is better. That's going to happen. But you won't walk out of the ballpark wondering what you're watching. You'll just know that you just had a bad night.
I agree, and I look at that game in Athens, and I'm not going to be sad to see them leave the schedule after this year. Sorry, I'm just not.
By the way, hats off to you. You were right on that. The schedule piece before they released it. Good info there.
Well, it was info by one of the Georgia insiders, so I give him the credit on that. But I am thankful for that. I mean, it's a big rivalry for South Carolina, but it's really not a rivalry much right now. Maybe by the time they roll back on the schedule, if Carolina Rise can do what Carolina Rise needs to do, and Garnet Trust can pitch in what they need to do, the games can start back being more competitive. That's my hope for sure.
Yeah, we mentioned this stat today. Jordan Hill was on with us from Dogs 24/7, and The last 3 seasons, South Carolina has been outscored 133-36.
It's about like Clemson under Muschamp.
Yeah. Well, and I look, man, and I know you've got Emily coming up. I don't want to take up all the time, all of anybody's time here, but Carol, look, that's one of the things where I think Gamecock fans deserve a lot of credit, and I give our own fan base a lot of junk sometimes because they fall off a cliff when any little thing happens. However, with that said, you know, this fan base has been around a long time. We've all watched. It's not like this used to be some perennial power in college football, and all of a sudden they just took a nosedive, and everybody's trying to figure out what happened. Steve Spurrier built them up. Everybody thought, myself included, that they had achieved a new level or they had raised the floor, so to speak. Hey, maybe we are an annual 8-4 program, and some years we'll go out and win 9, 10 plus games, and but a bad year around here might just be 7-5 instead of 3-9 or so. And in addition to that, it's not like Carolina had been losing games since they've been around. They've lost a lot of football games over the years. Okay, I think where people had issues with Coach Muschamp, and if you go back and look at some of the records like Will had early in his tenure compared to Shane, they're literally almost exactly the same. Same thing with Steve Spurrier. The difference is, and this happened to Will too much, and it happened to Shane too much early on, is people they're sick and tired of watching South Carolina go out and not even be competitive in some of these ball games. Getting beat is one thing. Getting your rear end embarrassed on national television was another. And it's the old bag trick. Let me just put the bag over my head. So I don't want anybody to even know that it's me pulling for these guys from a fan's perspective. Well, I understand that. If you get beat, you get beat. That's fine. Getting embarrassed every other week, that's a different story. Now, Shane began solving that problem last year at Kentucky, and it turns out they ended up being okay on the road because they, of course, went up to Clemson and ended that streak. But, in his first year, he was as embarrassed as anybody being the face of the program. I would imagine Coach Muschamp was too. That's where people had a real issue. Hey, it's not about losing. It's about looking like you're a JV squad facing the Green Bay Packers. This is ridiculous. And, when Coach Spurrier got to South Carolina, Keith, we learned very quickly around here, very quickly. You don't cheer in close losses. You should go in and expect to win games. And that Auburn game that happened in 2005, that crap never really happened again. And you knew that you had a chance in every game that he was coaching. If people just want to know you have a chance, because if you don't have one, you can't win a bunch of games. And but that's changed, certainly. And Shane Beamer has brought that life back into this program, and it's neat to see.
All right, so let's talk about this team going into fall camp. First, though, I was reminded of something. I wrote it down and moved on to something else. And so we were talking about recruiting, and you mentioned dog fights. Well, it's kind of ironic that South Carolina's lost 4 defensive linemen, all to Georgia. Unfortunately.
Yeah.
And, that's just the way it goes. And it is big boy recruiting. And so my vacation started by attending Brad Lawing's memorial service at Lexington High School at the gymnasium. And Brad, he had many sayings. Some of them I can't repeat on air. But one of the most profound statements he ever made was, Keith, Bo, I'm just telling you, the words easy and recruiting, they don't even belong on the same page, let alone the same paragraph or the same sentence. Mm-hmm. There's nothing, when you're in South Carolina, there's nothing easy about recruiting if you're recruiting the right guys.
Yeah.
And South Carolina is clearly recruiting the right guys. If you're going against Alabama, Ohio State, and Georgia, and Florida State, and Penn State for a lot of these targets. Now, some we're losing out on strictly because of NIL. I mean, of all the schools, Keelan, Mr., Mrs. Adams, if you're listening, I'm sorry. This is just my opinion. Of all the schools that kid was considering, Virginia Tech is absolutely the worst possible place for a wide receiver. My daughter's godfather, his son visited Virginia Tech, and they didn't even know what the plan was on offense up there because Brent Pry's a defensive coordinator.
Right.
And so I just say this. I'm not saying that couldn't change, but it could change. You know, Daniel Hill, I drove through Meridian, Mississippi to Tuscaloosa, JB, on I-20. It's just like being on I-26 and coming from Spartanburg to Columbia. It's 90 miles.
Right.
But it's also Alabama.
Yeah.
Okay. You're in big boy battles here. And I'm not willing to throw in the towel either, really, on any of these kids. And there will be others that will emerge, and there will also be a transfer portal, which Steve Spurrier and Will Muschamp and Lou Holtz did not have the benefit of having. And as we all know, recruiting is a marathon. It's not a sprint. So I just wanted to throw that in. Easy in recruiting, Brad Lawing says, do not belong on the same page.
Absolutely.
All right. So fair or unfair, Clayton White is on the hot seat this year.
No, I think that's fair. I think that they need to improve defensively. Like their talent, you know, I think they've improved in some spots, certainly. I know they've got some young talent and some young guys are really excited about. Probably the best looking group of linebackers you've had in a while. We'll see how they play. I think there will be some surprises up front, but I think it's fair. He's done a nice job, but they probably need to do a better job on that side of the football as well. And so I would say that that's fair. Yeah.
I mean, if you want to go where Shane Beamer wants to take this program, you can't allow 198 yards per game on the ground.
Yep, absolutely.
You just can't do it. Especially now with the new rule change, which is one of the things that's been brought up at SEC Media Days. Everybody slashed their wrist and wanted to drive their cars off bridges, and the world is ending because in college football now, they're not stopping the clock on a first down unless you go out of bounds on the first down. Then the clock will stop, except for the last 2 minutes of each half. Well, guess what? The only time anybody really cares about the clock stopping after a first down is in the last 2 minutes of the half when you're trying to get a score before halftime or to go down and win the game.
Right.
I tried my best to watch this poor guy they promoted Steve Shaw out of his job because he was terrible, and they brought in this guy. And Steve Shaw's a much better speaker, I can tell you that. I heard him last year. I'm going to hear him again on Saturday in Dallas at the Texas High School Football Officials Conference. Heard you guys talking about the high school coaches convention, which was last week in Texas. And Texas high school football, it's different. It's just like NCAA football. There are some UIL exceptions, but the NCAA rule book, predominantly Texas high schools abide by all those rules. So God love him.
Yeah.
He's got a tough job. Officiating is a thankless profession. It's an older profession because younger guys are not joining. They need to get younger and more athletic, and they need to train them and coach them up for sure. Really, other than Jimbo's non-answer answer on Bobby Petrino, that's another dude that's day to day. I mean, you never know when he's going to show up with a neck brace and a scuffed up face. All it's going to take is one ride on a Harley with a hot co-ed. But
yeah,
that's going to be interesting. But I did think the commissioner made great points on name, image, and likeness and the need for congressional oversight and to have a national NIL policy so you don't get the state attorney general of Tennessee threatening to sue the NCAA if they give them a bowl ban for hundreds of level 1 violations simply because they've got a name, image, and likeness law that would take money out of the student athletes' pockets. Now, I'm not a lawyer. I have stayed at a Holiday Inn Express. But that notice of allegations was well before they passed that NIL law. So to me, it just goes to prove, I don't know how much longer the NCAA is going to exist because it's just a feckless, useless organization, quite frankly.
No.
But
yeah.
Anything that's really caught your attention other than Hugh Freeze looked like he was coming off a bender and hadn't shaved in 3 days, and he might have stumbled out of one of them places that got him in trouble when he was at Ole Miss?
No, not really. I think I know Billy Napier's speaking now, and he's a guy who is not.
I'd rather watch paint dry.
I was about to say there's nothing interesting about listening to him speak, but it is incredibly interesting that he's standing up here with a Florida team that is I don't think they're very good, and I think a lot of people don't think they're very good. Although the ESPN analytics give Florida, this is unbelievable. Georgia has a 90% chance to win the East. Tennessee has a 5% chance to win the East. Tennessee has a 3%. Tennessee has a 5% chance. Florida has a 3% chance. And then both Kentucky and Missouri have a 1% chance. So I guess South Carolina and Vanderbilt, according to ESPN analytics, have a 0% chance behind, Missouri and Florida and Kentucky and so on and so forth. But I feel like Billy Napier is a guy who, and I hate saying things like this. I really do. I do not like necessarily speculating on anybody's future employment in any way, shape, or form, because these people have families, and I think the large majority of people are good deep down inside. So, but this statement shouldn't catch anybody out of left field. This could be the last time you see Billy Napier on this podium as the Florida Gators head coach. They ain't waiting around down there to get it turned around. Not with the transfer portal, not with the consistency in which they used to live. They did not fire Dan Mullen to have 2 consecutive seasons under 500 while you put 200 analysts in place down there on your staff to go out and find all these players and all these things that it takes to build your football program, but yet you can't win 7 games a year. 7 games a year in Florida doesn't cut it. By the way, neither does 8. You know what else doesn't cut it? 9. You better be winning 10 a year at Florida, period. And they ain't winning 10 games this year. So what I'm getting at here is at the end of the year, they might have a winning record of 7-6. That I wouldn't be shocked if they said, yeah, this just ain't going to work. And whatever money we owe you, we don't care. So, there's nothing really interesting outside of the fact that what I've heard thus far, outside of the fact that I just think we've gotten into much more of a dog eat dog, cut the cord as soon as you can type world because of the transfer portal. Now, I also think that some coaches deserve a little bit more length on that rope because you can wake up. Shane Beamer did it. And 3 of the top 5 or 6 players in your program have decided that they're going to take off for what they think are greener pastures. So the transfer portal, you spend 2 and 3 years recruiting a kid, you get him to school, and then he decides in the middle of the night he's going to call you and tell you that he's leaving. So I think there's some grace that deserves to be given on things like that. But, at a place like Florida and a place like LSU, which they're not going to have this problem, or a place like Georgia or whatever it is, they expect to win these games. They don't care. They don't care. So the guy left the middle of the night, call another guy. That's the way they look at it. And, so no, there's not a ton. But Florida, I was looking forward to seeing what Coach Napier had to say because some of these, how it is, Keith, they lay the groundwork in July to try to make sure, especially coaches who might, quote unquote, be on the hot seat. They try to lay the groundwork earlier to make sure that they've got some type of grace if things don't go well. And I don't know that Billy Napier's necessarily going to be doing that, but he ain't walking in there with a very happy group down in Gainesville either.
A whole lot more families are dependent on Billy Napier because of the size of that support staff.
Yeah.
Than any other staff in the country. And if he does make it to year 3, he has a brutal schedule. And even in the non-con, they've got Miami, FSU, and, oh, by the way, Gus Malzahn in Central Florida sitting over there who would love to just tattoo their ass, in addition to 8 SEC opponents. It's not looking good for Sunbelt Billy. All right, so I got about 3 more for you. Let you go.
Yeah, you're fine. I'm good.
DeKerian Joyner at running back.
Yeah.
Man, is this... Yesterday, I talked about 15 minutes. I tried to do a 5 guys segment on the super seniors, and I couldn't get past DeKerian Joyner and Xavier Legette because when you think about DK, when he came out, Elite 11, state champion, threw for 10,000 yards, had an unbelievable record as a quarterback, lost his dad, came to Carolina because they told him he could play quarterback. Kurt Roper didn't even think he was a quarterback. All the things this guy has done, the selflessness, the resilience, the character. Same for Xavier Legette. His career probably hadn't turned out the way he thought, but I mean, part of that was he didn't have a wide receivers coach until Stepp showed up, and then he missed practice because spring practice because of an injury the first year.
Mm-hmm.
Quarterback. Dude came in and saved the Georgia game in 2019, made big plays against Tennessee. Last year, now he's probably going to be your starting running back. After that belt or the Mayo Bowl, he could have said, I'm out of here. I've proven I can play quarterback at the highest level. I'm going someplace else. He hadn't done it.
No.
He stayed. He's been a great teammate. He's been loyal. He loves the University of South Carolina. And now, well, we need you were a quarterback, then you're a wide receiver. We had to move you back to quarterback, but then you're a receiver again. Well, now we need you to be our starting running back. So now he's listed as a running back, and he's 6'1", 229 pounds.
Yep. Well, and Keith, when I saw him and got to spend some time with him back in April, I don't know if he was 229, but I guess it took Coach Fink putting out the preseason media guide for people to finally believe what JC and I and I know some others kept trying to explain to everybody every day. This guy looks like an SEC running back. And if he wasn't 229 then, he was probably pretty close. And, I mean, that was the first thing you noticed when he walked in was, well, they clearly have made it a point to not only tell him, but focus on the fact that he's going to be a running back for 12 games this year. That's what his body looks like. And I've been around a few running backs in my time, and his looks pretty good. Now, okay, I hear the other side of that. Absolutely. Well, he's never been an SEC running back for 12 games. He might get hurt in the first one. We don't know. He's never done – he doesn't know when to cut it inside and cut it outside. That's fair. I can't have the conversation. I don't go to practice. I don't know what he's looked like running some of these plays and running routes out of the backfield and knowing who to pick up and not who to pick up and things like that. But here's what I do know. And this is why I think that there's some – I know, first of all, I know he's worked his rear end off, and I know he has actually picked up more of it than you would probably think he has to this point. I also know this. Again, we'll go back to Coach Loggains, a guy who understands what he has, who he has, and who can and cannot do what. That's important. So having an offensive coordinator that gets that, that's number one. He also has a guy named Spencer Rattler at quarterback who's been around a while. And this isn't just some QB who, well, he's a really talented guy, but he's young. That's not the case here. You have a true quarterback in there, and you have a quarterback who knows what everybody around him is supposed to be doing and where they're supposed to be going and all those things. And then here's the most important thing. This is his 6th year of college football. He's been around longer than all those other guys. He's been around longer at South Carolina than Dowell Loggains and Spencer Rattler combined times 2. Okay? So he's a guy who understands the game of college football, period. He gets it. Now, it's fair for fans, Keith, and I'm not, this isn't like, I'm not trying to talk over somebody's head or look like I'm high and mighty or anything like that. This is college football. We all love to talk about it. Some opinions matter more than others. Some are pretty stupid. Some are really good. We all have pretty stupid opinions sometimes. I don't think it's fair for any of us, nobody, unless you've actually been a running back in the SEC, to be able to question for months on end going into the season whether this guy knows when he should be cutting inside and cutting outside, and whether he can sustain this hit and sustain that hit, and whether you don't know. None of us do. The guys that know are the ones that, play in the uniform. They call the plays, and they're not going to give us any tips as to whether he can or can't do it. The tip we're going to get is when you cut the TV on or you walk into Bank of America Stadium on Saturday, September the 2nd. So we only have to get to go by what we hear and what we see that really is not relevant. So everything I've heard is you can't ask for him to do any more than what he's done and trying to prepare himself. I think simple logic tells us this, and this is just common sense, I would think, right, Keith? You do best what you do often. I've been in media for 10 years. When I started out, I was terrible. All right, it took some time. You had to keep figuring it out. You find your own way of doing things, but then also there is a way of doing things. And DeCarrion Joyner, probably that first week is not going to be the DeCarrion Joyner you're going to see in week 3, 4, or 5. He's probably going to be a little bit of a different player, but I know that they're planning on using him. And I know that he's a guy that they want to see in game 12 still back there. And that's not discounting any of those other guys. I think Mario Anderson's going to play. I hope people understand that. He's going to play. DJ Braswell is going to play. Juju is they're all going to play. And luckily there is a staff in place and with a leader of that staff that understands how to do things. And maybe at some point in time, one of those guys isn't playing as much as the other, but that will be earned on the field. It won't be given.
I totally agree. I mean, look, when Johnny Wright tore his ACL in fall camp in 1979, they didn't have another running back that they could put in a split back veer to play tailback. And so Jim Carlin said, well, I got this fellow named George Rogers. We're going to make him a tailback. And the first game of the season was against North Carolina, and they lost. I mean, there was a dude on the other side of the field named Lawrence Taylor. He was pretty damn good. But George Rogers' first game in the I formation was not his second or third, or I think he had over 20 straight games of 100+ yards rushing before it was said and done. But it took him a game or two to figure it out. And you know, to carry on, those carried the ball a ton from the shotgun.
Yeah. In
high school, at South Carolina. And so there is that. All right, so everybody's talking about Nicholas Harbor. Obviously, he's the newcomer. He's the 5-star. He's one of the fastest men in the world. He's probably the fastest 6'5", 241-pound man in the world, that's for sure. But there are other newcomers that I hear about, JC hears about, you hear about. I mean, this was not a one-man signing class, right? I mean, this was a very good recruiting class, and I think there are going to be a lot of young guys that are going to play. And so other than that guy, Nicholas Harbor, who are some of the newcomers that you expect to be on the field and their roles to increase as the season goes on?
Well, I mean, I think there's two parts to that question, and I'm pretty sure you're asking specifically about the young freshmen. But I mean, from a obviously you bring in the guys in the transfer.
Yeah, I'm not talking about Trey Knox or Joshua Simon or Nick Gargiulo or
you're talking about
Eddie
the young
Lewis.
guys. Yeah. I do want to make sure I mention this though, because we've done it since day one, since he got to campus. He was the first. Actually, it was the first name that was mentioned to me. Josh Simon is going to be a player. He's going to be a player. He's going to be a player. He's going to be a player. Don't forget that. Just trust me. He's going to be in a lot of different roles, and you're going to look out there and go, "Oh my God, this guy's from Dalzell and he's a Western Kentucky. What in the world?" And he hunts and fishes, which is even better. Yeah. So when you look at the young guys, look, you gotta like what a guy like Jalen or Jelon Kilgore is going to be able to do. I mean, his name just keeps coming up, man. Every time that you have a conversation with anybody in that program, his name comes up. And so, I think that I think not only is he a guy, Keith, who is going to step in and play, I think he's actually going to step in and play immediately, if that makes sense. I think you're going to, once you get into fall practice, you're going to hear so much about him that it's just going to be impossible to not see him out there. Look, Xavier McLeod's going to play, and I know there's some people who are concerned about his weight loss. Well, here's what that tells me. He needed to lose 36 pounds. That's what it tells me. because Luke Day isn't dropping him down to thin him out and not be able to sustain himself in the league. You know, you got to remember he is leaning up. So, and he came in heavy. I don't know if anybody knows that, but he came in heavy. He was baby fat. And so they needed to get him right, and they did get him right. Now, would you like to ideally see him?
And he may be 320 next year, but it'll be a completely different looking 320.
Well, that's what I'm saying. You know, like, yeah, exactly, Keith. The guy's been on – I mean, come on, man. We've been doing this a while. Guy's been on campus for 6 months, and he's lost 36 pounds. He's losing 6 pounds a month, and he hadn't quit working out. I mean, obviously they're leaning him up and making him strong, but then, yeah, the bulk's going to come. It ain't going to come this year. He's not going to play at 300 pounds this year. He might maybe plays at 290. I don't know, but he's going to be between 280 and 290, but he can play. He can play. Now, he's not going to be – I don't think he's going to have a role out there. I think my money is more on Nick Barrett and TJ Sanders being surprises to people, but, you know, this is a guy who's certainly going to play. All right, so let's go beyond that. And people were talking about a lot of this last week when the numbers came out as far as weight loss, because there's nothing else to talk about. So let's talk about all these guys, you know, weight loss and weight gain. There's something that stuck out to me, and this might surprise you a little bit, but if you think about it, it'll make sense. Marquis Anderson came in at 307. You know what he is? He's 302. That should tell you a lot, right? Because this guy's been around a while. So he didn't come in as big old chunky Marquis Anderson, and we got to shave 20 and 30 pounds off this young man. He came in looking pretty good. That's what that tells you. I mean, unless he's been sneaking out of the facility every day and running across the street and destroying everything in that Bojangles building over there, or eating the hell out of the Waffle House, then, which is not true, then that tells you that he came in shape, and he only lost 5 pounds. So that tells you they like where he is from with his body type. So when they get into fall practice, I think he's another guy that you're going to see this fall. Is he going to start? I don't think so. Maybe he ends up starting later on in the season. I'm not going to predict anything like that. But I do think that he's a guy that you're going to see get in there early at some point in time to see what he can do. I think Desmond Umeozulu is a guy that you're going to see get in the ball game more often than not early on in the year. I know they like him. I know he's thin, but they do like him, and he has playmaking ability, and he's probably a guy they're going to try to bring along, so they're going to want to get him on the field. Vakari Swain is an interesting one here. And because I've heard you hear good things, you know. I just think that it's going to come down to, we know he's really good, but is he better than the guys that are playing? And he'll probably have to get a chance to prove that. But he's certainly a name to keep an eye on. We've already gone over DJ Braswell, and I'll end with these two. I mean, I've heard some things on some other guys, but I don't want to extend this segment forever and ever and ever. Look, man, Pup Howard is going to be the star of this freshman class, I think. Had a great chance to, outside of Nick Harbor, I think Nick Harbor certainly has a chance to do that. But as far as guys who are actually just going to be in there a lot, Pup Howard's going to be in there a lot. And had a great chance to interview him with Bill Gunner a few months ago on 107.5 The Game. He was outstanding. I understand that when he walks by you feel like he's been around a while. That's dangerous. He got in before they played the bowl game, as a matter of fact, so he kind of has been around a little while for a freshman. He's going to be really good, and I don't think you need to expand on that a whole lot more. It's just a matter of getting in there and letting him take his licks during August, and he's going to be fine. And then, look, man, Keith, I was really hesitant on this for a long time, but it's hard to really kind of now ignore the fact that Lenora Sellers is going to play. And, you know, I just don't know that they can move through this whole season without having a way to get him on the field and see what he can do at some point in time. And if he brings value to your offense, then you're going to have to play him. You look at his body type, he really beefed up. And so he's been in there working hard, and he came in looking good. They can do something with that. Now, does that mean he's the second string quarterback? Nope, it does not. It does. Does that mean he's competing for the first string? No, nobody is. That's Spencer Rattlers. But I also don't think that I think he's going to play. Now, whether he plays more than 4 games or not, I don't know. You don't want to burn him if you can avoid that. But it's gotten to a point where they're going to probably have to at least give him a chance to go out there and see if he provides value that you think we can use this guy to win a football game. You can't leave wins on the table. You just can't do it. And so they're going to give him a good, long, hard look. You're going to hear good things about him in fall camp. And then when you get into the season, you'll probably see him out there at some point in time. And whether he continues to earn that time or not will be really up to him. But he's going to play. I don't know where I don't know where that's going to be. My gut tells me it'll be somewhere in the Furman game. You'll see him try it out there at some point in time, but he's going to play.
All right. Great stuff, Jamie Bradford. The only one name I would add, Elijah Caldwell. You just can't. Everybody I talk to, I think this guy.
Good point.
He's going to play. Man, I can't thank you enough. It's always great catching up with you. Thanks for all that you do. Thanks for all that you've done. I treasure our friendship and always love talking Gamecocks and kids and Braves and everything else. So, man, go take a nap.
Yeah. I got a meeting coming up at 3:00, so there won't be any naps with that. But, yeah, I certainly appreciate you thinking of me, no doubt. And keep on keeping on. It'll all be here soon, and we won't have to talk about the weights of players anymore and God knows what else from time to time. But can't wait to get to Charlotte September 1st, I guess, is when I'll get there. So thanks a lot, man. Enjoy it.
All right. Thanks, JB. All right. That was Jamie Bradford. We'll be right back after this message with Emily Adams.
If you enjoy listening and watching the free Wednesday show, now live streaming on YouTube, and would love more Gamecock Pod daily, join our growing Gamecock family by becoming a monthly or annual subscriber. You'll be able to listen to the show every day of the week and listen to guests like J.C. Sherbert, Hale McGranahan, and John Whittle from thebigspur.com, Colin Taylor and Mike Uva from Gamecock Central, Emily Adams from the Greenville News, Ben Portnoy, Michael Lanana, and Jeremiah Holloway from GoGamecocks.com, Michael W. Bratton, the host of That SEC podcast, and many, many more. As a VIP subscriber, you can join or listen to the weekly live Zoom call with up to 100 of your favorite Gamecocks and friends. After the show is an unrecorded overtime segment where the real scoop gets dropped and discussed. It's like going down to your local pub or sports bar and having a conversation with your Gamecock friends about last week's football game, men's and women's basketball games, and Gamecock baseball. And of course, there's always recruiting to discuss. In addition to the weekly Zoom call, VIP subscribers get the most popular podcast, The Morning After, which is released every Sunday morning during football season, and more VIP perks are in the works. Follow Keith on Twitter at KAllset, or follow the show on Twitter at GamecockPod. Go to the top of the homepage and follow the link. If all else fails, go to patreon.com/GamecockPodDaily. Join now and get up to 3 months free off an annual VIP subscription. You will love it, guaranteed. Now, back to Gamecock Pod Live.
And USA Today. Emily, you look very refreshed. You look like you've just come off a great vacation. How's your summer been?
Yeah, can't complain. It's, had to get the last little bit of, beach time in before media days kind of signaled the end of break time for us here.
Well, beach time is certainly a great time, and soon for you it'll be driving time to Nashville. So thanks for joining us before you make the trip. And so let's dive right in. So more not positive news coming out of Gamecock football recruiting world. Jalewis Solomon will not be in attendance as of today at the cookout. Daniel Hill will be at Alabama, which on my summer vacation, I drove from Austin to Fort Lawn, South Carolina, and it's all I-20 until you get off on, well, that's a lie. I go up I-35 to Dallas, and then it's I-20 all the way across to Columbia. Then you get on 77 and get off on Highway 200 to Great Falls, and that's where my neighbors have moved, and so it was great to see them. But along the way, Meridian, Mississippi to Tuscaloosa, Alabama is about like going from Spartanburg to Columbia on I-26. It's a straight shot, and it's about 90 miles.
And not a whole lot going on there either.
Not a whole lot going on, except the great Governor Ironside decided that he would shut down one lane of I-20 for road construction in the middle of the day. And my GPS kept telling me, you're entering Louisiana. And that was at 1:30. And I finally entered Louisiana at about 3:15. So stayed in Hoover, got up the next morning, drove straight through, had a great time. Got to take my daughter to see the Atlanta Braves play.
Oh, that's fun. And
it was awesome. We sat right next to the Chop House in right field by Ronald Acuna. And I told her how great he was, what number he was. We watched some games before she left Herman, before we all got back together. Oh, Daddy, I can't wait to see him play. And so he's standing out there in right field. Daddy, how come he's not doing anything? He's just standing there. I was like, well, nobody's hitting the ball yet. So Braves go to the bottom of the first, and Acuna leans off, and the first pitch, he hit a 420-foot home run.
Not a bad introduction.
Then the top of the second inning, he makes a leaping catch at the wall and robs the guy of a home run. And then the bottom of the second, Michael Harris hit one into the Chop House, and then Acuna came up and lined one inside the foul pole down the left field line. And so he hit 2 home runs in his first 2 at-bats and robbed a dude of a homer. And so I actually looked like I knew what I was talking about.
I love it.
And so the Braves, Addison, she wanted to know, what does this mean in history, Daddy? I was like, well, what it means, baby, is the Braves hit more home runs in the first 2 innings of a baseball game than they've ever done in the history of the franchise. And they did it because you
got here. I love it.
And so it was great. She was dressed up. I got a bunch of pictures. Truist Park is amazing. And my parents started taking me when I was a little boy, when I was 4 years old. I don't even remember seeing Roberto Clemente, but certainly the way Acuna Jr. is playing this year, he may be the best right fielder since Roberto Clemente.
It's headed that direction for sure.
No doubt. All right, so let's dive into your article. It's behind a paywall. It's been up for a few days. Maybe you'll share. Obviously, South Carolina got off to a great start in the spring. They swept the state. Every player they offered, they got, including the top 2 offensive tackles in the country. Of course, they've had Dante Reno committed since June 15th of last summer. I clearly remember that date because I was in the emergency room with a fractured radius when that welcome home went out. They have a nice class, but the June official visits only netted 2 commitments. They're anticipating getting a lot of guys back for the cookout. Look, there's still over a week to go, and 17-year-old boys, their minds change every time the wind blows. And so there's a long way to go, but it is a little concerning right now because South Carolina, quite frankly, Emily, they are losing guys because of the lack of available funds for name, image, and likeness. They lost Keelan Adams, a 4-star receiver from Virginia Beach. They're going to lose Liam Andrews, who gave every indication, according to my sources, that he was coming to South Carolina. Jonathan Paylor, that race is tightening up. Jalewis Solomon and Daniel Hill, that's not looking the best. But there is this dude named Dylan Stewart who has more stars by his name than anybody else they're recruiting that I do think is still looking good. So just talk to us about your article and certainly the eyebrow raise, and now on the message boards, of course, it's just like the worst of social media. It's massive overreactions and guys slitting their wrist, and the world is coming to an end. But I don't really see it that way because recruiting is a marathon. It's not a sprint, but it is disconcerting right now and a little alarming, in my opinion. And I think from the title of your piece, I think you kind of have the same thoughts.
Yeah, that really was kind of my my thesis statement. I feel like in writing that is it's definitely not, it's not a good thing for sure. There are, some red flags, some things trending in the wrong direction that I think are fair to be concerned about, or fair to have questions about at this stage, as you're coming into the summer. They've done a lot of visits, which is what we're seeing, I think, with obviously they were up in the top 10 in the country early in the year in the national class rankings. Now, I believe, at least last I had looked, they're down to number 20. And that may have fallen again since that last commitment from Malcolm Ziegler. But yeah, they've sort of done the reverse of what most of the major programs are doing, which is, they loaded up on the front end and now are kind of struggling with some of these summer guys. They're not getting that same boom, like they had after the spring game. They're not having that same turnaround from, official visit season. It doesn't seem like so far. But yeah, I don't think it's, sound the alarm, panic, Shane Beamer can't recruit anymore. It's the hard thing with recruiting is you're going to lose sometimes, and sometimes you lose a few guys in a row, and sometimes you get a few guys in a row, and it sort of is a very, it's a very up and down thing. It's an inexact science. And so I think, it's not, I don't think South Carolina's, recruiting class is dead in the water. But, I think if they lose out on that whole group you just mentioned, then it's going to be coming into red flag time. Last year they had that late push again. They lost Big Tree and then got Big Tree back within, a week stretch there where it looked like things were falling apart. And then, suddenly it really all came together right before signing day. They didn't add Nick Harbor for sure until February. So, it's there. The recruiting game is a long one. It ends in some ways in December, but for a lot of guys, it keeps going even through the spring. So, you know, there's a lot of options left on the board, but the options are thinning. And I think that's where the concern comes in at this point.
Yeah, so there is a logo at the bottom of the page, Carolina Rise. And so, you know, quite frankly, I'm not going to throw blame. It is what it is. South Carolina was reactive instead of proactive when it came to NIL. They've been behind the 8 ball. Carolina Rise was able to save Park Avenue. Otherwise, that was going to go by the wayside. Nicholas Harbor, by the way, getting a deal, Beats by Dr. Dre.
Yes.
As well as other deals. Park Avenue, I think, is essential for the future of the program, because the more big-time players you get, the more valuable they become because of the established relationships with national brands and their ability to market big-time athletes.
Well, and I will say, I think that's something that, you know, Dawn and the women's basketball program have done a very good job of, is, you know, Dawn obviously has a lot of sort of existing relationships on her own, which obviously helps with that situation. But, you know, they've done some of those team-wide deals you've seen. I mean, obviously, Aaliyah and Zaya came out and signed Adidas deals almost right away. Aaliyah, you know, signs the biggest rookie deal I think Adidas has ever signed for a WNBA player. And then, you know, you see, obviously, you know, they did a lot of those Under Armour spots last year. You know, I feel like that team is very much engaged on sort of the brand management side, even more so than, you know, when you look at the collective sort of things that you see at like an A&M or even like what's going on in Arkansas right now. You know, a lot of there's a difference between, I think, the brand building and NIL that's coming through collectives a lot of the time. And I think, you know, South Carolina's women's basketball has really sort of put on a masterclass in navigating the actual brand side of it and kind of NIL in the spirit of NIL as it was intended.
You're absolutely right. And, you know, when you've got 8 or 9 McDonald's All-Americans and, you know, you have high profile players, it's easier to get those national deals. But in football, it's different. You have 110 players, and I just don't think all players are equal. And I think name, image, and likeness should be earned. And certainly in recruiting to get big time players, they've got to have NIL money because everybody else is going to promise them NIL deals.
Yeah.
But the guys there at the bottom of your roster that are not really contributing, name, image, and likeness is not for them. They've got to earn it. I mean, I'm sorry. South Carolina is not Texas A&M. If you had a collective with $23 million,
that's different conversation here.
I mean, I could name 15 players that are getting paid money right now that probably shouldn't be getting paid money right now because they really hadn't done anything. And I'm not trying to cast aspersions. I'm just saying, when you have one collective that's paying salaries, you got to pay the right guys so that you still have the liquidity to make sure that you've got money for big time recruits. And South Carolina's failing at that. And I think it's a university-wide failure because of the lack of the promotion, the lack of the proactivity. And that's got to change. And at Carolina Rise, we are trying to change that. And so go to carolinarise.com, if 20 people right now will give $20 a month, okay, my math's not really good, but I think that's $480 a year per person. And if you can get 5 of your Gamecock friends to give $20 a month, and then those 5 can get 5. It doesn't take, nobody's asking you to give $10,000 or $20,000. But if 1,000 people commit to giving $20 a month, that's a big deal, because that's $20,000 a month over the course of a year. That's almost $250,000 in addition to what everybody else is giving. And that, to me, is the central, most important thing. I'm going to get off my soapbox there, but I can tell you this, okay? When Chris Fowler is losing his voice on a Saturday night at Williams-Brice Stadium in disbelief because Spencer Rattler is going 30 for 37 for 438 yards and 6 touchdowns, and they're boat racing Tennessee and eliminating them from the college football playoff, you can't buy that kind of advertising. You know what happens when the Gamecocks win, Emily? Ever since before you were born in 1984, when I was a student at South Carolina, and we had the Black Magic season and went 10-1, record student applications, record freshman enrollment. Steve Spurrier, 2010, 11, 12, 13, record applications, record enrollments. Athletics, that's the cover of your book. That's the front lawn to your house. That's what everybody sees before they see the academics and the programs and even the facilities now, which everybody's got, by the way.
Yeah.
And it all comes down to players. And Shane Beamer needs more players, and nobody knows it better than Shane Beamer. All right. So we'll see what happens for that cookout. Shane Beamer makes his annual appearance at SEC Media Days tomorrow. There have been some interesting speakers. We had Greg Sankey, who I thought gave a great speech on name, image, and likeness. I thought he gave a great vision for the future of the conference, for different teams playing teams they hadn't played in different venues. I think that's great for the sport. I think it's great for fans who get tired of going to the same places every single year. Texas and Oklahoma enter the conference next year. To celebrate that, they're moving SEC Media Days to Dallas. Dallas is a major convention city. There's 2 airports. There's tons of hotels. I've stayed at the Omni downtown. It's a beautiful hotel. It's a convention center. And I think that's a great move to celebrate bringing in 2 of the top 8 brands in the modern history of college football. And I'm talking since like 1970. You're adding Texas and Oklahoma. That's a really big deal when you look at what Texas has done. Look at, that Vince Young team against Southern Cal. There may be the most NFL players on one field ever, maybe outside of now Georgia and Alabama. Oklahoma, multiple national championships, Heisman Trophy winners, just like Texas. A lot of money, football-loving states. Your thoughts on them joining the league and on media days being in Dallas to celebrate that? They're going to light up the Dallas skyline with the SEC logo and colors. I think that's going to be pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, I can't complain. Dallas hosted the Final Four well, so I have no problems heading back there next year. And yeah, it makes it a little bit easier of a trip for some of those further out west folks, and Arkansas, Mizzou, and all of that. Because I mean, Nashville I like as sort of a middle ground, but coming anywhere east of that is definitely a little bit of a hike for that crew, and will be even more so with Texas and Oklahoma in the fold. But I mean, it seems like, when I was down at spring meetings in Destin, Oklahoma and Texas were there as well for the first time. And so it's been really interesting just to kind of see that dynamic start to form of them sort of becoming, of this becoming a reality after so many years of it kind of being speculated and rumored and talked about and, analyzed half to death. But I mean, we're here, we're on the threshold of it. So it's, I think most people are happy about the doing away of divisions. Obviously, losing some of those rivalry games, for South Carolina obviously has one of the big casualties in losing Georgia, and then not having Tennessee or Florida on the 24 schedule. But, I mean, I can't imagine Shane Beamer's looking at that and too upset that he doesn't have to play Kirby Smart in 2024. And I mean, that schedule South Carolina drew for 24 is really not bad comparatively. I mean, Texas got done dirty in year one. So, I mean, I think next year we'll definitely have some growing pains, to say the least. But I mean, it feels like it's kind of ready to go whenever they click in.
I agree. I mean, I think certainly as we look forward to a 12-team playoff, to new scheduling models beyond 2024, which the commissioner was not willing to say what that would be, I think it will be interesting. Like, there's always the hot takes. Oh, well, I think all the conferences that play 9 games, 8 games. Well, really? How many national championships have your conference been in? How many college football playoffs have you had entrance in? What's the strength of schedule in your league versus the strength of schedule in the SEC? South Carolina plays 8 SEC teams this year, and they open with North Carolina and Drake May, who could be the number 2 overall draft pick.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, and they got that clown from the upstate named Dabo coming to Williams-Brice Stadium at the end of the season. Clemson, they won a couple of national championships recently. They hired Garrett Riley. I mean, all schedules are not created equal. All conferences are not created equal, okay? When you get Duke, Wake Forest, Louisville, Georgia Tech, Virginia Tech, and Boston College right now on your schedule, I don't give a crap if you play 13 conference games. It's not the same as playing a legitimate SEC slate when you're looking at Alabama, LSU, Georgia, Florida, Texas A&M, Tennessee, South Carolina, Ole Miss, etc. And now Texas and Oklahoma as well. So what are your thoughts on those national writers with their hot takes, like Nicole Auerbach ripping the SEC for potentially staying at 8 games?
Yeah, I mean, I'll say I would be shocked if they're not at 9 games by like 25, 26. I think that's the way everything's trending. I think enough of the coaches would like to see it go to 9 games. I think having 3 permanent opponents is an easier scheduling model, just, from the conference's perspective, and also from, the television perspective, just sort of having those 3 locked in every year. I thought it was smart, honestly, for them to stay at 8 just for 24, and to sort of leave that door open to reevaluate it in 25. I mean, obviously it is to an extent sort of, kicking the can down the road and delaying the inevitable. But, I don't think it's a bad idea to give it a year of transition before you set permanent opponents, and give it a year of transition before you, to see kind of what the playoff is looking for. That was something big that a lot of them talked about at spring meetings was, coaches didn't feel like they had enough information from the playoff perspective in order to make a decision on whether 8 or 9 games was going to be the most beneficial. So I think, keeping the status quo for a year as sort of an experiment was not the worst thing they could have done. They could have just gone to 9. They're almost certainly going to go to 9 at some point in the next couple of years, but I don't think it's as horrible as it sort of was looking like from a bird's eye view.
All right, so I used to think, just like you, it was inevitable. However, the SEC did sign that new TV deal with Disney, ABC, ESPN, and that was for 8 games a year. And ESPN's kind of hemorrhaging right now. And if I'm the SEC, if you want 9 conference games, you better be willing to amend that deal for a lot more cash money than currently exists.
Yeah.
And there's also this guy named Nick Saban, who was a proponent of 9 games, who now appears to no longer be a proponent of 9 games. And so I like the current model. Give us 1-7, and then you play a mandatory Power 5 opponent. And that gives you 9 Power 5 opponents. For South Carolina, they're playing Clemson. Yeah. In 2025, they're playing Virginia Tech and Clemson. A lot of other schools have scheduled big time out of conference matchups. And I think that really penalizes them. Because now if you play 9 conference games, and then you play Virginia Tech and Clemson, if you're South Carolina, or if you play in, let's say, I don't know, Southern Cal and Michigan, if you're Alabama. I mean, that's pretty grueling, especially when now you're adding more games because you're going to a 12-team playoff.
Yeah, I mean, I would not be surprised to see some of those sort of non-conference contracts that teams have get renegotiated or completely bailed out on in the next couple of years if it does go to 9. South Carolina has been pretty clear about wanting to keep the Clemson game on the schedule even if it does go to 9. And you've got a handful of other SEC teams with non-conference rivals in the Power 5. You've got Kentucky and Louisville, where Louisville's not exactly Clemson, but it is still a Power 5 team at the end of the day. You've got Florida State, and Florida State's been a program on the rise the last couple of years. So it's going to be an interesting. I think the 2024 spring meetings are going to be a big one, just in terms of seeing where things are trending and where Texas and Oklahoma land on it, because Texas and Oklahoma did not have a vote this time around. And in 24 next year they will. So I think that'll be interesting to see whether that sort of changes anything in terms of the breakdown of who's advocating for what.
No doubt there'll be a lot of politics. There'll be a lot of backroom banter and deals. And ultimately, Emily, it's probably going to be just like everything else. It's going to come down to money. That's just the way it works. All right, so Shane Beamer will be there tomorrow. Do you think he potentially could hand off the sunglasses from the Soldier Boy video to Mark Stoops when he leaves the podium?
I can't imagine he would. He has that amount of public pettiness in him, but I'm sure he would like to, and I'm sure South Carolina fans would like him too.
So, Josh Heupel, more chins than wins over Shane Beamer. I think he's also on Thursday. Is he on Thursday as well?
I believe that's and Tennessee's had a long week, courtesy of my former colleagues over at the Knoxville News Sentinel.
And so, look, I gotta say, to me, that is just more evidence the NCAA is a feckless, useless organization that cowers down to everything. I'm not a lawyer. I have stayed at a Holiday Inn Express. But you can't allow an attorney general to threaten you with a brand new law for name, image, and likeness when all of those violations and the notice of allegations all came in writing before that law went into effect. Hundreds of level 1 violations, more than Danny Ford had his entire time at Clemson, and Clemson got a 2 or 3 year postseason and TV ban. Okay, and all they got is an $8 million fine, which Jimmy Haslam can write that check out of his miscellaneous funds accounts, or, you know, the $80 million a year or $100 million a year Tennessee's going to get from this new TV deal. I mean, that is $8 million seems like a lot of money, but that's really laughable in the SEC. I mean, that's chicken feed. No pun intended.
Yeah, I mean, it's just been interesting seeing, you know, I know, you know, they've been putting a lot of time the last couple of days into trying to ID some of those unnamed recruits in those reports. I mean, obviously the Darnell Washington report broke a couple of days ago. And obviously, you know, didn't even end up landing him. He ended up at Georgia. So that's sort of put a really interesting color on SEC Media Days. I know Kirby Smart was asked about that yesterday and did a little dodge on that one, but it's kind of creating this new layer, I think, of and I'm sure, you know, Heupel will get questions about it on Thursday, and I'm sure that will then lead into Shane getting questions about it, as you know, it's just going to be on minds of, you know. And at spring meetings, they talked about a lot. Tampering was like one of kind of the 3 or 4 big topics of conversation. And everybody had a lot of issues with it, and nobody had a lot of solutions. So it'll be interesting to see where the next couple of years kind of go in terms of that, and if there's anything that you can do about it, because I don't know that there is, unless everybody's going to start turning everybody in. And if that happens, the entire Power 5, I think, crumbling down before long.
Look, I don't think it has to come down to everybody turning everybody in. I think it comes down to enforcement. And the NCAA is unwilling to enforce heavy penalties, which they have enforced in the past. And what Tennessee did was egregious. It was out in the open. I mean, I think at some point you had Jeremy Pruitt's wife writing recruits checks for car payments and rent and stuff like that, not to mention all those McDonald's bags. But let's talk about Shane Beamer. What are your expectations at the podium tomorrow? What do you anticipate the talking points will be as we go into year 3 of Beamer Ball 2.0?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it this week, obviously with Spencer Rattler making his Media Days debut this week, I think he'll be sort of at the center of a lot of it, and just kind of the questions with the offense in general with Dowell Loggains coming in. And, you know, I think what most of the national media saw of South Carolina last year, you know, I feel like was sort of encapsulated in that 2-week stretch where they, you know, put up 6 points on an incredibly mediocre Florida team, and then turned around and put up 63 on Tennessee the next night. So, I mean, I think a lot of the storyline for South Carolina just coming into this year is whether any of that is replicable, or whether it is going to end up chalked up to just sort of a fluky hot stretch at the end of the year there. So yeah, I think that'll be kind of a big talking point for him. Obviously, I'm sure the recruiting will come up. And yeah, I mean, if we get another video, who knows? Because you never know what that creative team has up their sleeve.
I got a feeling right now Justin King has been up all night in his lab.
I'm sure.
And he's working on something. All right, so we talked about this briefly. I nailed the 3 players. You had Kai Kroger going as well as Spencer Rattler, who, by the way, Shane Beamer did promise if Spencer was back for this year, he would definitely be coming to Media Days. He kept his word. Tonka Hemingway, who I think is outstanding, and I can't wait to watch him play this year along with the rest of those guys, and see Travian Robertson really maximize their talent. And so just your thoughts on Spencer Rattler, Tonka Hemingway, and Kai Kroger, who I'm pretty sure is the only specialist who was being brought by his head coach to speak at SEC Media Days.
Yeah, I mean, it's fitting. Certainly, he's, you know, getting a lot of first team, you know, All-America preseason sort of looked, and I haven't seen a preseason All-SEC team that does not have him as the first team punter, at least so far. So yeah, I mean, if you're gonna bring somebody, Kai Kroger's your star. I mean, as unusual as that is, you know, he's got, you know, 4 career touchdowns now. He's, you know, 100% passer rating. He's, you know, doing better than a lot of the quarterbacks who are going to be in that room. So yeah, I mean, I think it's a good group to bring. I think that trio are good, you know, kind of, it gives you a well-rounded representative of what the program will look like this year. And yeah, obviously Tonka, having missed spring practice, it'll be good to kind of actually get a chance to talk to him.
Tonka Hemingway, he's from a football family. I don't know if you realize this, but he won a national high school award as the top scholastic student athlete in the country because not only of his GPA, but he was a star at football, basketball, and baseball. And he's a really good interview. Kai Kroger is a great interview. So is Spencer Rattler. I'm kind of interested to see the questions Spencer Rattler gets and how much shade he's willing to throw on. We just call him Captain Dumbass on this podcast. We did not refer to his name, so please don't say it. But the previous guy, I personally think Spencer Rattler is going to have a huge year. I ranked him number 3 in my SEC quarterback rankings, unlike my good friend Michael W. Bratton from that SEC podcast. I think cousin Shane butthurt over Rattler throwing 6 touchdown passes and counting them off probably played a role in that. I think Rattler has better weapons than he had last year. I think he has more weapons because I think Trey Knox and Joshua Simon are both better than Austin Stogner and Jaheim Bell. I think Juice Wells will be better. I can't wait to watch Xavier Legette. I think DeCarrion Joyner, Gamecock Nation should endear this young man more than anybody's. And I had a long kind of aside on my podcast yesterday about DK Joyner and Xavier Legette and their persistence and their resilience over the course of their careers. DK's almost 230 pounds right now. I think he'll play between 220 and 225. He'll never hold all of that. But yeah, my question, Emily, is you had so much success running him against Tennessee. Why didn't you run him more against Clemson? Why didn't you run him more in the bowl game? Well, now he is going to be running because he's probably going to be the starting running back.
Yeah. Yeah, it's going to be – it's interesting the sort of differences in the offense this year because obviously you have Rattler coming back who's sort of expected to be the guy he was at the end of the year rather than the guy he was at the beginning of the year. And yeah, I mean, he has a much stronger tight end room, in my opinion. Overall, he has, an extremely senior receiver core. A lot of those guys are 5th years, Amarian Brown, Xavier Legette.
Eddie Lewis too. Let's not forget him.
Yeah. I mean, he has weapons for days there. And I mean, even, who knows how much we'll actually see him, but you've got a guy by the name of Nick Harbor who's on the roster too and could make some appearances there at receiver. But then you have sort of that giant question mark in the run game still, as much as DK has been sort of a jack of all trades, being the starting running back when you have not ever truly played running back, opening the season against North Carolina and then going right into SEC play is not a particularly easy introduction to the position. So, I mean, that's such a question, obviously with Juju McDowell and with Mario Anderson, both of them are smaller guys. So DK is going to be kind of the only big body in that running back room. And then obviously the offensive line is just such a question mark right now with, a lot of turnover from last year. First of all, Jalen Nichols, we don't even know if he'll be back at all this year. But Beamer has said, he definitely won't be there for the first part of the season. So they're going to be looking for a new starter at right guard. We could see some of the true freshmen in that rotation at some point. So it's almost a tale of two offenses where the passing game is just so set up for success. And the run game does not look like it's in any better a position than it was in at the end of last year to me.
So I don't think we're going to see a drop off. I'm going to tell you why. I think when you look at Ja'Kai Moore, he is a left tackle. He was one of their 5 best, so they moved him in. It's unfortunate what happened to Jalen Nichols. But quite frankly, if Jalen Nichols hadn't have been, well, I'm not going to get into that. But I think it's going to be Ja'Kai Moore at left tackle, who has a lot of experience there. He's a 5th-year guy. At left guard, you have the captain of Yale 149, Nick Gargiulo, who has gained over 15 pounds of muscle. Vershawn Lee at center, a guy that's played since he was a true freshman. Trey Jones, a guy who has played a lot and is probably maybe the most athletic offensive lineman on the team. I mean, when he came down in summer camp before his senior year, he ran sub 4.7 in the 40. We did see him catch a touchdown pass against Auburn in that game. That was a lot of fun 2 years ago. And then Tyshawn Wanamaker, who has started a bunch at right tackle. And I think the two transfer offensive linemen, Nye Manziel, I continue to hear great things about him at guard, and Jackson Hughes started 19 games at Charlotte, 12 at left tackle. I think that gives you 7 guys, and then I do think Marquis Anderson will play, and I would not count out Trevon Baugh as well. And so that's 9 guys. And I also think, because Dowell Loggains understands college football is not the National Football League, playing offensive line is not going to be like being in calculus class this year. I think it's going to be like being in 3rd grade math. And that's going to make it a lot easier to play offensive line. So that's just my take. Maybe I'm a homer, but there's a bunch of guys that have played a lot of football. All right, so I know you voted. Let's talk about divisions. This is the last year of divisions, East and West. Next year, South Carolina basically plays an SEC West Big 12 schedule in the SEC. A lot of people are upset about that. Not me. I don't mind not playing Georgia, and I don't mind not playing Tennessee, although if we do beat them again this year, I wouldn't mind them agreeing to play as a non-conference game. How do you see the Gamecocks in the pecking order in the East? I'm assuming you've got Georgia and Tennessee 1 and 2, like most everybody else will have.
That's correct. I went back and forth a lot on whether I wanted them 3rd or 4th in the East. I did end up settling on having them 4th behind Kentucky. I really liked Devin Leary. I thought that was a good pickup for them. And I'm a big believer in a lot of their young skill position guys. You know, Barry and Brown was a kid I saw a little bit in high school when I was covering high schools in Knoxville. And I mean, obviously he stood out as a true freshman last year. And I think, you know, he has the potential to develop into a real star for them. So yeah, I like Kentucky this year. But I think, you know, that 3-4 spot, I could have gone either way for me.
Gamecocks beat Kentucky on the road. They come to Williams-Brice Stadium this year, November the 18th. I'll be there. Addison will be there. Very excited about that.
That's not a bad one to come to either. That's a good hopefully you'll get a good game out of that.
Yeah, I mean, the last time they played at Williams-Brice, Kentucky gave South Carolina every chance to win that game, and they just couldn't take it because Captain Dumbass had no clue what to do other than one drive. All right, so tell me how many Gamecocks you got on your all SEC teams.
Mine's pretty standard. I've got 2. We only picked a first team, but I've got Juice obviously is one of my receivers, and then of course Kai Kruger is the first team punter. I think that's going to end up being a consensus selection. It seems like across the various preseason LSEC polls.
Good stuff. So, hey, I got more football questions, but I'd really like to spend a few minutes on women's basketball. Do you still have a few minutes?
Yes, sir. I can hang out for a couple more.
All right. So the freshies are gone. Aaliyah Boston.
Thriving.
Thriving in the W. And one of her own teammates' mothers is throwing shade on her on social media. But what else should you expect from anybody that played for Kim Mulkey other than, I mean, it's summer vacation, no class. That's a Fat Albert joke. That was a cartoon when I was growing up. Hey, hey, hey. Not a very good impression this morning. All right, so Camila Cardoso and Raven Johnson squared off in the FIBA event. The America's Cup, Brazil wins the gold medal.
Yeah.
And Camila Cardoso is MVP. Is this the springboard for her to potentially be in the conversation, not only for SEC Player of the Year, but as a National Player of the Year candidate?
Yeah, I mean, it would not surprise me at all. I mean, she will almost certainly be, I think, in the All-American conversation. And especially because I think in a lot of ways she's going to end up being sort of a centerpiece for that team this year. I think obviously some of the guards are going to kind of be the highlights, but I think, you know, in terms of the post, it's all Camila. You know, it's all, I think a lot of it is going to fall on her shoulders, and a lot of the pressure that Aaliyah took off of her is going to become her problem now. And so, I mean, I'm optimistic about her ability to handle that. I mean, I think by the end of the season, we saw her get there, and really, you know, I think that UConn game was a big turning point for her, just in terms of building confidence and, you know, getting through. Obviously, she was in foul trouble a lot in that game, and still, you know, fouled out, I think, with a couple minutes left in overtime. Or a couple minutes left in the very end of the game there. So, I mean, she just made such a jump last year, and I think she's ready to sort of take on the heavier mental load that I think Aaliyah carried a lot of for her last year, to kind of get her into the physical position she needed to be in.
All right, so what about Raven Johnson? I thought she stepped up in the biggest games. She did not take very kindly to Caitlin Clark waving her off in the national semifinals, and proceeded to, I think, hit 3 threes in the second half. Kept Carolina in it. I've watched her film. I've watched her play this summer. I think we're going to see the Raven Johnson that Dawn Staley talked about coming out of high school. I think she's past the injury. I think she's tweaked her jump shot. The form is there. The passing ability is there. I can't wait to watch her play this year.
Yeah, I mean, and I think Raven is another one who I feel like Camila, really kind of, you could see it click towards the end of the year. You know, you could see that confidence build in her, and just you could see her getting more comfortable in herself, you know, going head to head with opponents. I mean, just with taking shots even, you know, and like you saw in that Iowa game. I mean, I think especially in the beginning of the year, which is why she ultimately lost that starting job to Kiera Fletcher, I think, just because she was so hesitant coming back on that knee, but also mentally, I think she was hesitant, having missed that whole first year and not coming in with the experience that she, you know, had hoped to have by this point. But I think that's, yeah, I mean, that is long gone, I think, for her now. And I think if Camila is is a centerpiece of, especially of, you know, the offense, I think that complements Raven great, because they obviously have had a really strong connection. Dawn liked playing them off the bench as a pair, rotating them in together. They've known each other for a very long time, been friends for a very long time. So I think that's a great, you know, to build around those two is not a bad position to have your rebuild in.
So Chloe Kitt's putting up big numbers.
Yeah, she's looked great. She looked great for Team USA.
I mean, look, she should be a college freshman this coming fall, right? Like, she entered in January. You can tell she's been in the weight room.
Yeah.
Molly Benetti does a phenomenal job. She's stronger. She's fearless. She can shoot it from anywhere. I think rebounding, going back up, being more physical, I think is coming easier for her now because of the added strength. And so I'm excited about that. And then she has a pretty good teammate straight across I-20 from Columbia there, Joyce Edwards. I think one of the announcers slipped up and said, Joyce Edwards, she'll be playing for Dawn Staley next year.
Yeah, I mean, hey, I would be shocked if Dawn lets a in-state #1 recruit leave the state. That has not been her way. And I mean, obviously, you know, Joyce in Malaysia, Fulwiley, our friends, have played against each other many a time in their high school days. And I'm sure the same is true with Ashlyn Loggains as well. So I mean, I'm sure she's being courted by everyone with everything, but I don't see Dawn letting that one get away if she can help it.
So there's a new group of freshies. They're coming up with their name coming soon. So now I don't have any evidence because the videos are not on YouTube, but evidently it is Malaysia. Everybody calls her Lay, so we're going to call her Lay. I've been calling her Malaysia, but it's Malaysia Fulwiley. I think she's a generational talent. She's a walking bucket getter. She's cocky. She's confident. She's playing for the right coach that will reel her in, and she'll find herself on the bench in a hurry if she gets outside of the team concept. But what is your expectation for her? Because I just think Dawn Staley has not had a guard with as much God-given ability to go get buckets. And she's had a lot of good ones as Fulwiley.
Yeah, I mean, I am as high as you can be on her. I mean, I just think she's a star. And it's obvious. You watch her for 5 minutes and that jumps out. You know, I think the defense is the only thing that might be, you know, a little bit of a learning curve for her, especially at the beginning. But I mean, on the offensive side, there's literally nothing she can't do. I mean, from a dunk to anything, you know, she can do it all. And I think she's going to be so special. And I think especially with Dawn, who I think relates to her in a lot of ways, sees a lot of herself in her. Obviously, you know, I don't see her playing a ton of point guard this year, with Raven and obviously with Tahina Pau as well coming in. But I mean, her and Raven in a lineup together is scary business. And you know, we saw Dawn play around a lot with those 2-point guard lineups last year. And having that trio of Raven, of Tahina, and of Lay, I think is very, very scary for any team without a lot of speed.
And I would say, hey, fams, I know you're not sleeping on Tessa Johnson. I'm not. She's silky smooth. She's 5'10". She can get her shot from all three levels. Her talent is phenomenal. And so give me your opening day starting five.
So my current prediction obviously starts with Camilla and Raven. I think those are the obvious ones. And then my other pretty locked in pick is Bree Hall. I mean, she looked like the heir apparent to Bree Beal last year. She was the most consistent 3-point shooter. I thought she had a great year last year. I think she's earned that spot. And I think she's the best returning defender that they have in a 1v1 perspective. And that's where I think the drop off is going to be in terms of the defense, especially at the beginning of the year. So I think Bree Hall will sort of be the stabilizing factor in that way, in the way that I think Bree Beal was a lot of the time, as just sort of that consistent presence. I think Bree Hall has that same sort of vibe in her. And then the other two are where I think it gets a little bit murky for me. Right now, I think, day one in Paris, I think it's Tahina starting, although I would not be surprised at all to see Fulwiley kind of step into that, or to see them really split minutes, similar to how Raven and Kiera did last year. I just think that's a really fun dynamic pairing at the 2 guard. And I think both of them have the ability to kind of flex between the point guard and the 2 guard spots. And then the other forward, I think, is the really big question mark. I know we've talked about this before. Right now, I'm saying it's Ashlyn Watkins, but I'm not 100% confident in that. If you asked me to put money on it, I wouldn't. But that's who I'm going with right now. I mean, obviously with what Chloe's doing with Team USA right now, that's I'm sure moving her up a little bit in the lineup. But I think with Ashlyn, just the way that she was used last year makes me feel like Dawn has a level of confidence in her again to be sort of a consistent and a stable presence. And I think at least to start the year, they will need that. But yeah, it would not surprise me at all to see the starter at that spot change several times throughout the year, just with the amount of options that they'll have there.
All right, so I'm taking Dawn Staley at her word, and we can agree to disagree, but I'm going with Sanaya Fagan.
That's the other one.
It's her time to shine. Yeah. She sat for 2 years. She was the number 3 player in the country, and her own coach called her the most talented post player on the roster, which included Aaliyah Boston and Camila Cardoso.
Yeah.
And she knows the only thing that kept her off the floor was defense. And I have to believe she comes from a family, her mother's an educator. She wants to play. And so that's who I'm going with. But, I'm not discounting Sakima Walker is going to get some minutes there. Look, there's only 11 players now with Talasia Cooper transferring. And, we didn't really even talk about Chloe Kitts that much, but she's going to play. I mean, they're going to have a nice rotation. They're going to be bigger, but I think they're going to play faster than they have played since Dawn Staley had the small lineups, and that was before they were winning SEC championships.
Yeah, I'm excited. I mean, I just again, I'm as high as you can be on a freshman on Full Wiley, and I mean, I've always been a Raven Johnson fan. I love that sort of high speed dynamicism that she has, and I think Tahina Paopao has some of that as well. And so I mean that trio is just a nightmare. So it's gonna be fun. And I think it's gonna be a surprise in a lot of ways. I think that's an advantage they'll have early in the year. Because I do expect there to be some growing pains and some figuring of things out in the beginning, but I think also this is going to be a very different style than a South Carolina team has had in a long time. And so I think they do have sort of that element of surprise of, how they're going to approach things going into the start of next year.
I wouldn't sleep on Sanaya Ja either. I talked to a scout. She's not 6 foot tall, folks. She's about 6'3". Okay. And she is physical and fearless. And so, last question, Emily, and then we're going to let you go get your rental car and say many thanks to you for joining us. Is South Carolina being slept on this year, and is being in an underdog role give Dawn Staley a big smile every day when she goes to practice?
I mean, I think so. It's hard to say slept on, because I do understand. I mean, the reality is, and I think a lot of fans are resistant to the term rebuild. When you lose your whole starting lineup, it's a rebuild to me, and that doesn't come with any connotation of negative or positive, of you're going to be good or bad. But starting from scratch when you lose, the arguably the most impactful senior class in the history of your program, that's a big deal, and it's going to come with growing pains, and it's gonna, come with bad games, I think, in the beginning. So, I mean, I think they're a top 10 team easily. I don't think that's up for debate. And I haven't seen them outside the top 10 anywhere. And they're knocking on the door of, I think, that top 5, but I understand sort of the impulse to want them to prove it first, to want to sort of see it in action before putting them truly in that mix. But I cannot imagine they are not getting every bit of whiteboard material they can out of that while they can, because I don't see it being that way for long. But yeah, I mean, especially coming off of last year when it was just pressure all the time, I think this is a much healthier position for a young group to be in coming into the year. I
agree. I think they welcome that, and I think that's something to be able to thrive in. And the last time South Carolina was ranked as low as they are now to start a season was 2019, and I think we know how that
went pretty well.
Pretty well. Emily, thank you so much as always. I hope we can circle back and talk more Gamecock football and recruiting, and always basketball with recruiting coming up. There is a birdie in the nest. I kind of thought the announcement might be that it was Khadijah Sessions. Next time we'll get into that. Thanks so much. Safe travels. I can't wait to see you ask a question to Shane Beamer there at the dais, and have a great time in Music City, and we'll look forward to catching up with you down the road.
That is the goal. Thanks, Keith. Pleasure as always.
All right. There we go. Sorry, I think I was muted. Special thanks to Emily. What a supersized show today. I think the term for Dawn Staley and her program is they don't rebuild, they reload. And I do think they are loaded, and they're coming because they didn't realize their goal, and they're going to have a chip on their shoulder, and they are going to be hungry. So One bit of news before we wrap it up today on the longest Gamecock Pod Live in its history. Just like I told you, folks, 17-year-olds, they change their mind every time the wind blows in a different direction. According to Gamecock Digest at Sports Illustrated, Jalewis Solomon will, in fact, still make a visit next weekend to Columbia before his decision. So see there, the sky is not falling after all. And with that, that's going to be a wrap. We will be back with the Garnet and Black Town Hall tonight at 7 o'clock. You don't want to miss that. It's one of the favorite parts of my week. I get to see 50, 70, 80, up to 100 of my favorite Gamecocks and friends, and it's very interactive, and we chop it up for about an hour, and then we go to overtime where it's not recorded, and we have a lot of fun there too, and a lot of gossip and scoop and names get dropped. So tune in tonight for the Garnet and Black Town Hall. Hey, you can sign up at no cost for a 7-day trial VIP membership. And you can join us tonight on the Garnet and Black Town Hall. So for special thanks for Jamie Bradford and my good friend Emily Adams, this is Keith Alsep saying, God bless, go Gamecocks, and God bless our troops. Until next time, I'm out of here.